Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Net. It's our Friday the 13th, 2024 edition, and this is a special episode all about Cloudflare's Year in Review 2024. We're coming to you directly from our Lisbon office, the library, the beautiful library. So our Year in Review started in 2020, so this is a new edition with new sections. We're going to talk to you about different countries. So this is a microsite we're going to show you in this episode, that microsite. So we're going to show you trends all about our beautiful planet in 2024, and of course, the internet. It's important to know that we're showing you trends throughout 2024, and also you can compare with 2023. So it's all about time. And of course, remember, this is all about Cloudflare's data. So we have a global perspective, and we're sharing that perspective with the general audience. But first, some trends regarding Friday the 13th. The fear of Friday the 13th has a very specific name known as, let me try to say this, paraxcavia. It combines superstitions about the number 13 and Fridays. Some trace it to the Last Supper, where 13 guests gather before Jesus' crucifixion on a Friday. Also worth mentioning that it was 50 years ago, on December 1974, that FinSurf, along others, released the first full specification of the Transmission Control Protocol, TCP. This is a protocol very important to the internet we have today. On that note, this year, we did a special episode all about the 50 years of TCP you can check in our show page. Now for some trends, this is a longer episode, first because it was a busy year on the internet, but second because Cloudflare has a lot of data. We want to go over some of the trends we saw in 2024. And we also mentioned in this episode Robocop, a cool name, but in general is something that allows content creators to stop bots and crawlers to scrape their sites with a button in our AI Audit dashboard. On to the episode. I'm your host, João Tomé, based in Lisbon, Portugal, and with me I have David Belson, our head of data insights, based in Boston area, right, David?
Yeah, just a little bit north of Boston.
So we work together a lot, and Year in Review is one of those moments that is the summary, in a sense, of a lot of work during the year, different blog posts, different trends, different things that are on radar, that are observed in a different way, right? How can we explain those who don't know what is Cloudflare Radar and its Year in Review? What are those two, in a sense?
Absolutely. So I think at a high level, Cloudflare Radar is basically I'll call it a portal, for lack of a better term, from Cloudflare that helps us bring insights into the internet to the general public. And, that could be just journalists. It can be, network practitioners, security practitioners, just members of the general public who are interested in various topics. By virtue of the global deployment and the global footprint that Cloudflare has, the millions of customers that we serve content for and protect, we're able to basically gather up a lot of what I call data exhaust from that usage. From those services, we analyze it and then break it up by country or network, allowing end users to see trends across various topics, whether it's security, whether it's traffic, internet quality, internet outages, the adoption and usage of certain protocols, things like that. So Radar, they're organized, across these various topics on Radar. And you can go in and look at them, generally defaulting to, a short period of time, like a week or a day, depending on the metric. So Year in Review is an effort to kind of bring that all together into one coherent interface, and to provide a much longer term look, to say, okay, over the last week on Radar, it looks like this metric did this, but, over the course of the year, it did that. And maybe, maybe it's continuing to trend upward over the whole year. Maybe it trended upward earlier in the year, but now it's trending down. So it's giving a longer term perspective on sort of the health of the internet, if you will, or the various, the various vital signs, that make up the internet.
Exactly. You mentioned how Year in Review came about. It was in 2020, the first one.
Yep.
So this is the fifth one. The 2024 is the fifth one. And of
Right.
course, every year there's additions, new sections, new perspectives, not only because Radar has different sections.
Continues to grow. Yeah.
Exactly. But sometimes the year is different for all sorts of reasons. And we add stuff depending on what was the year about.
Exactly. Yeah. If you look back at the 2020 year review from, I believe that John Graham Cumming, who we report to, wrote it up. And it was a fairly short post. And actually it was mostly about, if I remember correctly, traffic shifts between cities. It was much, it was a very granular look because obviously at that point we were sort of, headlong into COVID. And people were moving about, they're saying, okay, if I don't have to be in this office, I'm going to go, live elsewhere, work elsewhere, if all I need is my laptop and a connection. So we looked at how traffic had shifted in that respect. And then the following year, which was, days before I joined Cloudflare, I know it had expanded. I know that was the first year, I believe, that you had drafted the top internet services post. And we added that.
In that
to
case, I wrote two.
Review. What's
exactly. that? In that year, I wrote two. It was the first time we wrote two. One, the typical year in review, also focused on the pandemic and the changes between.
Right. It was still very traffic based, and what I believe what verticals or industries I think saw the most traffic over the course of the year. So there was a focus on that, and then. And which were being attacked. And then 2022, 23, and 24, we've tried to sort of run that circle and incorporate more and more Radar insights into the project.
Exactly, makes sense. Let me showcase in a sense the microsite that we did this year. It's quite similar to the one that we did last year in terms of visuals, but there's definitely new. So this is Cloudflare Radar, for those who don't know, with a lot of different metrics here. And we have here a very direct link to our microsite this year in review. David, we added this year these summary cards, in a sense, that showcase a bit on some of the things that are highlighted in the report, right?
Right. Yeah, but it was a way to kind of bring the key findings for each section up top. So, if you see a key finding there about, IPv6 adoption, bot traffic or whatnot, you can click on that card and it takes you right to the section. So there, if you click on the Spain one there, it'll bring you down to the internet quality section, where we highlight the connection speeds, upload, download, and the latency measurements that we've done. And in this particular case, because we're looking at it worldwide, ranking in the countries.
Exactly. And even I think this year there was a big improvement in terms of user experience. We have buttons to go up and down and explore the different sections. This is a very typical section that we had since the beginning, the internet traffic growth, in a sense. Also, this is a global metric, but folks can explore different countries. And this year, and why not talk about that right away, we can compare between countries, right?
Yep. Yeah. So last year in 2023, we had a few of the line graphs, a few of the, believe the traffic related graphs. User had the ability to, or actually didn't have the ability. We by default showed a comparison with 2022. We had heard from some folks that they'd really like to be able to compare metrics between countries. And now, because we've also been doing this for several years, we've been keeping the metric definitions, and we've been keeping the prior year's data sets, as in sort of backup. So that enabled us this year to build in capabilities to compare both between geographies. So I can compare worldwide to a country, or I can compare two countries. And then I can also compare 2024 to 2023. So in some cases, you can compare both countries and year over year, and the graph gets a little busy. But you can also then, click to deselect what you don't want to see.
For example, I'm showing right now the United States with a clear growth in traffic, and also Morocco. We could see Ramadan here, and also one of the major holidays, religious holidays, here in June, which is not the case in the US.
Right.
And there's a clear path in terms of growth different between countries. In the summer, a drop. In late November, an increase. And people can definitely compare and see the differences between countries. Is
right.
really...
And I know like in the United States or in worldwide, the shape was very similar year over year. So we saw, a what I call a flat, it averages out to effectively flat through mid-year, and then it starts to grow more aggressively late summer. And we saw that last year and the year before as well.
True. Continuing, this is a category, a section that we had also last year and 2 years ago regarding internet services, where people can explore the different categories regarding social media, generative AI. We have also a more complete blog post in terms of showing the evolution between the different categories throughout the year. And why not showing off the fact that this year, and this is a new thing, we have the by country perspective, at least in the overall perspective. And I added Portugal because in Europe, this is something that we mentioned in the blog. In Portugal and in Europe in general, Microsoft services are much more in the top 10 than they are in other countries. So Europe and Portugal in this case appear to like Microsoft services in terms of
right. Yeah, it was definitely interesting to see, when we looked at the country level top 10s, there was a lot of familiar faces across countries, but then certainly in some countries, you saw some more local sites and services. Like if we look at South Korea, for instance, if I remember correctly, we see like Naver. There's at number 4. So it's but other than that, it's still the other global platforms. But in some cases, we have those more local services that pop into the top 10.
Makes sense. This is a very popular category as well. SpaceX, Starlink traffic trends. News media outlets have been picking up last year and this year as well. Everyone knows that Starlink continues to grow worldwide in different countries. And we show not only the worldwide perspective, but also the by-country perspective here, right?
Right. Yeah, it's definitely interesting for Starlink to see the growth, especially when the service is sort of newly established there. They're constantly turning up new geographies. And, we see, I believe if you go to like Malawi, we saw some just absolutely massive growth there over the course of the year. It had been activated, I believe, in Malawi in late, I want to say like the last week of December last year. And then, so it starts almost at 0 there. And then it grows, fairly quickly over the course of the year. I'm trying to think of the other country that we called out, where it was, where it had been activated, I think earlier this year. And you see this almost vertical ramp once it becomes available.
I think it was Paraguay in the sense.
Yes, I think that's Paraguay definitely saw a big jump. I can't remember. This was another one we called out that it had a big increase. If I remember the other one, I'll come back to it, but sure.
Let's continue. IPv4 traffic distribution. For those who are not using Quad 1 Warp, they can play and zoom to their own IP address here. Also see this landscape. This is not new, but it's always...
No, this one started out last year as a sort of almost a lark of a, hey, it would be really cool if we had a perspective like this. And one of the team members at the time who had done a lot of work with the Hilbert curves is like, I can pull that together. And so he, much quicker than I expected, we wound up having a version of this. So the interesting thing, with no plots on it is seeing who owns the various address space, sort of how it's distributed throughout the world. There are even some, as you're mousing over there are some address assignments that were made before the regional internet registry system was in place. So you'll find that folks like AT&T and there's a car company, Daimler, I think, has also a large block of addresses. But beyond that, it is, if you look at it from a traffic perspective, this is why it's not showing anything, because we have Paraguay selected. So if you deselect Paraguay up top,
that's
yeah, this is very puzzled.
Well, I was not
You'll
showing the
see
colors.
a perspective of where Cloudflare sees traffic from on the IPv4 internet. And one of the interesting things there is that we see the highest concentration of request traffic from a set of Google IP space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's we believe it's because that's where the Google bots live, and they were just crawling the millions of crawling the content from the millions of Cloudflare customers.
Mm-hmm. A technical but interesting perspective, and
Yeah.
show how complex the internet is in terms of networks and
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. This is a new addition, AI bot and crawler traffic specific. Radar added this section this year.
Yep, on birthday week.
Yeah. So how can we emphasize this one specifically?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting just to see the different patterns, the different patterns of the various crawlers that we look at here, but also just the difference in, I guess, scale of the traffic that we see from these crawlers. So, you're looking at ByteSpider, which started out the year, with a fairly significant amount of traffic, a significant amount of crawling traffic, but appears to have sort of scoped down over the year. Whereas Cloudbot, was started the year a little more quietly, and then became a lot more active in the late April, early May timeframe. Had a big burst of crawling activity there, and has been active, but sort of less so throughout the back half of the year. And then things like GPT bot and OAI search bot, Perplexity bot, I think I don't think they are sort of actively indexing or crawling. I think those come out a little bit more as a result of user requests. So I want to search, I'm asking my AI agent, my AI platform for information about something. So it goes out and it looks on the internet for, information on whatever topic that is. I think that's what we're seeing the remnants of there.
This is a very interesting topic in general, AI crawlers and bots for sure. And we actually launched in recent months a product by Audit. There's a blog post this week about that specifically, right?
Yes. So we launched AI Audit a couple months ago to give customers a better perspective on the various AI bots and crawlers that are consuming their traffic. And giving them insight into what those, what content are those AI bots and crawlers focusing on, what paths and whatnot. And then this week, as you mentioned, we launched Robot Cop, as I guess we're calling it, to enforce a site's robot.txt file. So in the robots.txt file, you can specify and say, hey, for these user agents, here's what you're allowed to do. And in some cases, it may be that you say, this particular user agent, let's say GPT bot, is not allowed to index or access anything on my site. Whereas Google, and you could say, I want you to access, everything under /blog, but nothing under /admin or whatever. So this new feature enables Cloudflare to actually go read the robots.txt file and enforce the directives that are in there.
There's a button that does that, right? Enforce robot.txt rules. This is really relevant for content creators, something that's close to heart as a former journalist. So a good topic to put here as well. Let's move on to post-quantum encryption. This week there was also a news article regarding Google and a advancement in quantum computing.
Yes. So Boss obviously would be able to go into the details there. From what I've read about it, I think that the nuances of the Google announcement were thoroughly lost in the coverage of it. I think what my understanding, at least from what I've read, is that what they announced is important, but is in no way an end game. I think PQ is still safe for several more years. The interesting thing here with this metric is, you can see that vertical ramp basically in April. That was when Chrome version 124 enabled post-quantum encryption by default. So that speaks to, in large part, the prevalence of the Chrome browser. And you can see it continuing to increase, over the course of the year. Because we are looking at this as an average over the course of the year and smoothing it. We come up with a 13.5% number at the end of November here. My understanding is that Google enabled PQ encryption by default on Chrome for Android actually last week. So if you check the radar graphs, the global radar graph post-quantum encryption, you'll see it's actually closer to 30% right now, or probably a little bit over.
So there was an uptick in recent days.
Yep.
In the south.
Yep, you can see right there last Thursday. So it was hovering previously around 20. If you go out to, like, say 2 weeks, you can see probably a little more starkly where it was previously around 20%, 20%, and then when that activation happened, now you start seeing it climb pretty significantly. And the interesting thing here as well in this graph is that you can still see the diurnal patterns. So the sort of almost the day-night, peaks and valleys, and then the weekend is obviously very clear as well.
Yeah, the weekend is lower because potentially there's less Chrome used over the weekend potentially. So this is always a good metric. I think most folks don't realize, but this encryption, post-quantum encryption, is really relevant even because if quantum computers start to decrypt things, this will make sure that previous data is protected in a sense.
Right. That's the concern. That's the driver behind the development of PQ encryption, is that there may be entities now that are, capturing and storing encrypted content. So you have used to have the lock on your browser, but they're capturing and storing that for potential decryption later. So the fear is that in some number of years from now, when quantum computers are capable enough, these entities will go through and decrypt everything, and I guess then, figure out what you bought on Temu back in December of 2024. Because I'm sure that'll be terribly interesting back, in 2020, in 2035.
And this is a nice one because this year we have a map which gives a different perspective, iOS versus Android. So not only we explain that 32.6% of traffic is from iOS devices, the rest is from Android. Of course, we also have a ranking of countries where Android, in this case, or iOS, people can select, has a higher percentage. And
I think we've seen that sort of 2/3, 1/3 breakout, be reasonably consistent year over year. The percentage has shifted a little bit between 2024 and 2023, but not in a significant way. So yeah, you can see they shifted us.
iOS has a slight.
iOS went up a slight bit, and Android went down a little bit. So I think we're hitting sort of a stasis point there. Where, my suspicion is that unless, either Android or Apple, if the promised, iPhone SE4 winds up being, incredibly powerful and incredibly cheap, maybe we'll see more of a shift next year. But other than that, I think, if you look at the map, what we're continuing to see is greater iOS adoption in countries that have, stronger economies, more cash to spend. Whereas many of the countries with lower per capita incomes are more heavily Android users.
Exactly. North of Europe, for example, the UK, Canada, US, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and Japan are definitely those. Right. Which is always interesting. This is a new addition this year, the map here, and we also have a map here for HTTP versions. In this case, 20.5% of traffic uses HTTP 3, which is a improvement from previous years, and a good thing in terms of security online, right?
Yep, and we make H3 available by default for our customers. Not all of them choose to use it, unfortunately. But it is something that we have been active actually in the development of. We have folks in the Cloudflare team that were active in the development of H3, and as we do with many new technologies, we try to make it available by default to really reduce the friction to enable customers to adopt it.
Makes sense. Also, a world map here. People can see where the percentages of HTTP3 uses is higher. Website technologies. This comes from one of our cool tools on Radar.
URL scanner.
People can browse and see what specific sites use in terms of technologies and things like that. And while doing the top 5,000 domains, we identify the popular technologies across categories. Very different categories here in a sense, right?
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, the category is in large part that URL scanner can identify. So on URL scanner, there's a technologies page. So when you go and scan a site, we can figure out, who is it using for advertising, what JavaScript libraries does it have embedded in it, and so on. So we're basically going through and scanning, as you mentioned, the top domains and figuring out what those sites are using.
API client language popularity. Go is the most popular choice. So this also shows a very specific API related perspective. Know that we know that APIs are quite important these days regarding the internet.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you use a mobile application, for instance, that is heavily API driven. So it's, the mobile front end is going back and making calls to an API endpoint, requesting all of the, whether it's the latest social media posts or your stock prices or what have you, to fill out the content in that interface.
Let's move on. Search engine market share. It's a new edition. We have reports on Radar regarding search engine market share, but also browser usage. This is the search engine perspective. People can also see in more detail where which search engines are more popular by Mac OS, mobile, Windows, so by operative system in a sense.
Yep, and you can also break it out at a country level as well, exactly, across all those categories. I mean, so for me, one of the interesting things in looking at this was, okay, Google is, basically the top search engine everywhere. But it was the distribution of the other, the second place search engine and the others that was really, I think, found to be different across multiple categories. So like Mac OS, you see DuckDuckGo is the number 2 search engine, the privacy focused search engine. But then if you look at, say, iOS, that doesn't hold to be the same case. Oddly enough, on iOS, Baidu is the second most popular search engine.
Excellent.
And then Windows, of course, is Bing.
Exactly.
But with Bing with a much larger percentage than the second place finisher in the other categories.
Almost 11%. Browser market share, also an interesting one with the same types of perspectives in terms of iOS, mobile, Windows, as you were saying. For example, Safari here is, for example, on Mac OS has almost 40%, which is a lot compared with the other general metrics. And Safari,
but in iOS it flips. So and Safari, because Safari is the default browser, people will just, okay, I'm just using Safari.
Exactly. Quite different in the overall perspective, where Safari only has 16%. Internet outages. This is something close to your heart specifically. Yes. There was an increase compared with the previous year in terms of major internet disruptions globally, and people can explore these very specific outages over the year in this timeline, which is really cool. And there's also mentioned here that government directed was number 1. Journalists have picked up on this as well. And what is the main thing we should emphasize about this?
Oh boy, so many things.
Right?
I think one is, yes, we saw over 220, outages over the course of the year. Those were just the ones that we tracked. There were other outages that, either we saw, in our anomalies feed, but weren't able to identify a root cause for. Generally, the ones we're tracking here are the ones where we know it happened because of a cable cut or because of a government shutdown or things like that. There are others where, we see a drop in traffic over a couple of hours or whatnot, and we don't know why it happened. I think the other thing to take away here is that, government directed internet shutdowns are unfortunately still all too common. They're being used in cases where the government wants to suppress communication, say around after election, for instance. Maybe they want to suppress the spread of misinformation, or what they claim, at least. In some cases, they shut down the internet in cases where there's riots or other unrest. So obviously, they want to prevent people from communicating and organizing. But what we saw a lot of this year across multiple countries still is government-directed internet shutdowns that are intended to prevent cheating on the national exams.
Mm-hmm.
So many in some of these countries, they have these national exams. They take place, every day for a period of several weeks. Then maybe separate sets of exams. They take place in June, then July, then September. So we see there's a lot of these individual shutdowns, like in Syria there or Iraq, where there are these multiple multi-hour shutdowns over the course of several weeks. And whether or not they're effective at preventing cheating on exams is still not entirely clear.
Sure, but that continues to happen for a number of years now.
Yes.
IPv6 adoption specifically here, also something important regarding the internet that people can explore.
And we've been a big IPv6 supporter and have been basically for all the years that Cloudflare's been around.
Exactly, since the beginning. Internet quality, a relevant one. We already mentioned this one, mobile versus desktop, with mobile gaining traction over the year. And it's quite cool for us to also have a map here showing, for example, Africa, South America, and different countries in Asia, India as well, that have a higher percentage of mobile device usage in those countries, which is kind of cool to see the globe in that perspective.
Yep, absolutely.
TCP connection anomalies. This is relevant and recent, right? We added this.
Yes, we launched this. We'd originally launched it in September 2023 in conjunction with a presentation that folks from our research team collaborated with outside researchers on. And then there was some additional work we had to do on it. So we wound up launching it again just ahead of birthday week this year. And what this shows, this is a little bit more of a complex metric in terms of explanation. But the idea here is that when a connection between a client and the Cloudflare server happens, there's, when you have a TCP connection, there's what they call a three-way handshake. And if the connection winds up basically being reset or times out unexpectedly at some point during that handshake, we can identify when that happened. So we have the three stages in the legend there. And then the signatures that we see based on what happened and when it happened can give us some insight into what might have been causing that. So at the risk of going to a rat hole, I'd say just, if you're interested in that, read the blog posts.
Exactly.
They really do a great job at explaining the data and the concepts behind it.
Makes sense. Mitigated traffic. This is regarding potential attacks, WAF, mitigate and manage rules, and also DDoS, quite important. And people can also explore the country perspective here. Bot traffic sources. Bots continue to be relevant, as we see in terms of this percentage. 68% of global bot traffic comes from top 10 countries.
Half of which comes from the US.
Exactly. The US is quite high there in the list.
Yeah.
Also, we have bot traffic share by autonomous systems. So which autonomous systems have the most bot traffic?
Right. And in this particular case, you see the cloud providers are among the top autonomous systems there. And to be clear, this is, ultimately both good bots and bad bots.
Exactly.
So, cloud providers certainly provide a comfortable platform for a bad actor to go and say, I'm going to spin up a VM on AWS. I'm going to do my malicious deeds, and then I'll rip it down and move on. So it's sort of more ephemeral. But then you also have, what good bot providers, crawlers or indexers or performance testers or things like that. They may also be using the cloud provider infrastructure. So this autonomous system perspective ultimately incorporates both good and bad bot activity.
Exactly. Also a popular one, most attacked industries, gambling and games organizations were the most targeted in 2024.
Yep, and they just barely eked out ahead of finance. You'll see it in the table there.
Okay.
They both have the same 6.6% share, but those just due to rounding. So gambling and games came out just slightly ahead.
Sure, that makes sense. Those are two industries in a sense,
right?
That are known to be target. Commonly exploited vulnerabilities, Log4j is still being actively targeted.
That was a surprising one to see. We covered that last year. We saw that last year, and then when we looked at it again this year, and we still see that it's so significantly ahead. The amount of traffic that we're seeing for it is so far ahead of even aggregated traffic for authorization bypass and remote code execution vulnerabilities. That this is literally a 3-year-old vulnerability. And it's still, the presumption is that there's still some success in exploiting it, because I think attackers, when they stop seeing success and they stop getting value out of it, they move on.
True,
but clearly that's still the case.
I remember in December 2021, I was...
Right, you had just started, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember a blog post being written explaining what we were going to do, and I could see that was quite important and relevant, but I was not expecting that 3 years after it was still being here. So
yeah, I think we published 5 or 6 posts over the course of like 3 days on that vulnerability.
We did. Routing security, also an important thing for the internet.
Yes.
RPKI, valid IPv4 routes in 2024.
So the idea here basically is that a network provider basically what they call signs, with some cryptographic attribution that says these are the network paths that belong to me, and I should be the one announcing them. So ultimately, if you telling other network providers, if you see somebody else announcing these network paths, that's bad, and don't accept them, and really don't share them. So we're seeing more and more adoption of RPKI, the routing public key infrastructure technology across the internet.
6.4% increase in 2024. It would be better if that number was higher, of course.
Obviously, yeah, but there's still a lot of work to do. But the fact that more than half is signed right now is an important milestone, to be honest.
This also shows how Cloudflare has different product. In this case, is related to Cloudflare email security.
Right.
And we saw that in 2024, 4.3% of emails are malicious. It was higher than in the previous year, 2023, which was around 3%, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I think this was actually brought higher probably by those spikes in the spring.
True. Top email threats with 43% of malicious emails contain a deceptive link. Also really relevant these days and in previous days. Knowing that phishing continues to be one of the
right, and it's funny seeing just seeing the stat and having worked with it over the last several weeks. Makes me just much more suspicious and much more paranoid. When I get emails and I'm looking at things going, okay, yeah, is this really a shipment alert from something I bought the other day, or there was an email I got yesterday about a settlement from some data breach, and it's like, okay, is this legit? Click here, and it's like, I don't know. I probably should have stuck the URL into URL scanner, but I didn't. But yeah, it's definitely something where it's still, email is still a very effective front door into an organization.
It is. Most observed TLDs in this case with .bar originated large share of malicious and spam email. And
yeah, there's been, I've been sort of, I don't even know what to say, sort of on the outskirts of the new TLD space since ICANN started back in the late 90s. And, paid attention to it. I went to the first ICANN meeting. But, so many of the new TLDs, especially these GTLDs, don't have a clear use case. .bar and .rest are actually, they were spun up by a hospitality organization, I think, for the use of, for the use by bars and restaurants. It's like, okay, but they see some usage. I think we mentioned in the blog post, have on the order of 20,000 registered domains under them or something like that. But they're not seeing widespread commercial usage. I think what they're really mostly has happened is that they're hijacked by bad actors to send spam or to send phishing, malicious phishing emails.
Makes sense. Before we go, let's show first the blog post that we wrote, inviting everyone to read them, because there's a lot of trends, very specific trends on U.S. elections, on Twitter, X, ChatGPT increased during the year, Starlink growth in different areas, outages, very relevant in specific countries that people can definitely explore in a sense. But also to give folks a perspective, this is the general Cloudflare 2024 year in review blog post with the key findings. What are the things that we didn't mention so far that you think are relevant this year that people can check?
I think we basically hit, basically all of it. I think, for me, in writing the blog post, there's just so much under the covers of the year in review that, I basically have to pick, small tidbits here and there. But for me, I think the value is really encouraging people, read the blog post, get a high level overview of what we thought some of the key findings were, but more importantly, go explore it for your country, or go explore it for a country of interest. Go explore it and compare it to last year. I think that's where the real value of the year in review lies, is to really, for each user to sort of almost customize their experience based on their interests.
Makes sense. This is the Internet Service 1, which has the categories. Folks can explore here something that is not on the microsite in a sense, which is the evolution throughout the year. Which ones were top and which ones were on a downward perspective, with ChatGPT highlighted here, and also GitHub Copilot making it.
Yeah, that definitely is taken off this year as well. And there was actually a really interesting article out. It was in the New Wired magazine, actually. It was an article about Microsoft's comeback. And they talked about their work with OpenAI and how that technology wound up getting integrated into what became GitHub Copilot.
Also mentioned here, Blue Sky and Threads, really far still from the levels of the main social media categories, big names, but appearing already, especially in November, and in the top 20 of social media, e-commerce, Temu growing. And I want to also mention the U.S. elections, where we saw very specific news outlets growing in our list regarding that. Here, this chart actually shows how BBC, New York Times, CNN, Fox News all rose on November the 5th.
Right around election day.
Exactly. So a lot to explore in those two blogs for sure. Before we go, what can people expect of Radar and of year in review for 2025? If we can at least give a perspective there.
I have to look into my crystal ball. We're starting to work on roadmap for 2025. So from a Radar perspective, want to bring more tooling to Radar. So not only adding more data sets, but also bringing more, functional tools to Radar. I think we found certainly that with the URL scanner helped us drive a lot of traffic to the site. So, what other important kinds of tools can we add to Radar that people would use on a regular basis? So we've got a list there that we're working through. We'll be rolling out some DNS insights shortly based on aggregated resolver traffic. So we got some of the stuff that was analyzed for the top internet services post. We'll be analyzing in a similar way for Radar. We're also going to be putting together an AI-centric page. So taking the AI traffic that we just reviewed, and that's on the traffic page on Radar, and bringing it onto its own page along with insights into robots.txt files that customers have or that sites have, and what they say with respect to what the AI crawlers can or can't do on those sites. For year in review 2025, probably not too early to start working on that. I know there's an opportunity to add more content around denial of service attacks and more security, that sort of security related metrics. I think we'll find more opportunities over the year. Certainly as we add more content to Radar, but also to think about, can we also include highlights from that on your review?
Makes sense. I'm always surprised on how much different aspects of the internet we can see, how much it summarizes the year, how much it actually sees relevant event-related information, something happened, a new service appeared. We can actually see a lot, and it's quite interesting to see the dimensions that Cloudflare has in terms of observability, which is quite interesting. Always surprised there specifically.
No, absolutely.
Oh well, this is a lot in terms of work and also process. So let's also thank everyone in the team that
Absolutely
so much in all of these areas in a sense.
Yes, yeah, the team has done a phenomenal job with your review since I've been involved with it. Every year it keeps getting better. I think, we've got talented folks in the team, and I think we've also got, as we're building up those more years of experience, we've got stable definitions, we've got better processes around archiving data and things like that.
So this was great, and
Yeah,
that's
thank you.